Welcome back to DataPower Gateway Training. So in this video, we are going to see what are the different types of DataPower services are available to develop and configure rules and policies. So there are four main types of DataPower services available. You can able to see that services in DataPower control panel or DataPower console. Web Service Proxy, Multi-Protocol Gateway, XML Firewall, and Web Application Firewall. So this is the description of the data power service types. So XML Firewall. So the primary use of the XML Firewall is to process the generic XML based requests, or it can able to process JSON or non-XML based requests. The main use is the XML firewall supports HTTP and HTTPS protocols. It doesn't support any other protocols, and the primary use of XML firewall is uh, for debugging or create some mock services in DataPower itself. It doesn't need any visual component to be specific for the particular XML firewall to be created. Web Service Proxy. The web service proxy is used to security and abstraction to the backend web services. The WSDL is required to create a web service proxy. So without WSDL, we cannot create a web service proxy. So web service proxies actually works based on the endpoint which is available in the WSDL document. So it's actually the backend is always taking from the WSDL's backend. And multi-protocol gateway. It's called mother of all services. It has the more powerful and versatile because it supports various kind of inbound and outbound protocols like HTTP, HTTPS, WebSphere JMS, IMS, NFS, FTP, SFTP, and etc. We can have any kind of protocol as an inbound request and as well as the outbound request. The web application firewall, which is not we are using it very frequently in DataPower. Very rarely some clients are using it, but web application firewall is providing the proxy for web application. It provides the cookie encryption and cross-site script protection and session management timeout. So basically, it's a kind of creating a proxy for your web application which is running on your backend organization side. So what is the data power service? So data power service means the service configured in data power to process message, request and response. So which means the whatever the request comes to the data power and it processes the request with some predefined rules what we have configured in data power. So based on the rules, the request will be validated and we can able to process some rules and apply some transformation on the request, and we can pass the response to the actual backend side. So that's what the primary use of data power service. The processing done in security, transformation, mediation, routing. That's what I told you. There is three phases of processing the service. One is the client side processing, service processing policy, and server side processing. So what is client side processing? So if you see the bottom of the diagram here, the remote clients or calling the data power, this the whole box is data power, calling the data power in a front side handler, which means and the data power port and IP address, data power IP address and port, and the service processing policy, where we actually able to create some rules and execute the rules against the incoming request and perform some transformation and mediation and routing based on the request, and we send it to the back side, the server side processing. So make sure the service is selected to corresponding IP and port combination in a front side handler. The front side handler should be available and the firewall should be open to the remote clients who's trying to invoke the data power web service, data power services. The service processing policy. That is the middle step. So once DataPower receives the request from the front side handler, the client processing side, it actually routes that into the processing policy. So the processing policy, we can able to create a multiple request. There's lot of request types, like uh, we can able to create various rules, kind of request rule, response rule, and error rule. Each rule can have a multiple action, like matching action, transform action, routing action, encryption action. There is a lot of actions are available. We will we can able to see those things in depth in upcoming videos. So this is the processing policy. It has the list of rules as I said, and it has the client to server, server to client, and error rules as I said. So the client to server means it's the rule is acting based on the request which is coming from the client. The client could be any client, SOAP client, or the real actual consumer client, or the any test client. And the server to client is actually the response is coming from the backside application. So the data power wants process the request and determine some transformation and send the request to the corresponding backend to get the response back. We can able to modify the response, or we can able to validate the response. We can do some transformation before sending into that actual client. That is called server to client. So there is a rule called response rule, which is means server to client, and the error rules. If some error is happening in any of the request rule or response rule, we can able to invoke the error rules to handle the errors. Also, there is one more operation is called both direction, which means you can able to create a common rule which can be executed or validated by the both rules, which means client to server and server to client side. The last one is server side processing, which means the data power once apply the service processing policy and determines that what is the backend of the particular request and where it needs to route the request to the based on the dynamic backend approach. It will send the back. It will call the backend services using SSL or non-SSL connection based on that thing, and there could be two possibilities of the backend. One is the static backend, which means we are going to always hit the same backend for all incoming requests. The dynamic backend, which means we are going to change the backend URL based on the incoming request. So we can able to determine the validation based on the message header or the message format or some XPath message conditions. So based on a lot of things, we can able to determine that and route that to the corresponding backend side. So once it goes to backend side, the data power hits a backend service URL. You will get the backend response back, and it will process it back. So this is what the data power services overview, and we will see more in upcoming videos. Thank you.